All right, let's dive into this stack of academic papers you sent me on Plotinus,
Oh, yeah.
3rd century philosopher.
Mhm.
And I gotta say, these are not exactly light reading.
No, no, they're not.
So I'm hoping you can help us kind of unpack
Absolutely.
the most mind-blowing ideas about perception and the soul.
For sure. So Plotinus, he's not just coming up with these ideas in isolation. What's really fascinating is how he sort of remixes
Oh.
ideas from these big hitters. In Greek philosophy, we've got Plato, Aristotle,
Yeah.
even the Stoics.
Okay, so he's like synthesizing all this stuff into his own.
Yeah, he's pushing them to their logical conclusions. So
Okay, before we get to the really trippy stuff,
yeah,
can you just give us like the overview of his worldview? Like, what is his big picture?
sure. So imagine like a pyramid,
Okay.
with the one or the good at the very top.
Okay.
This is like the ultimate source of everything, pure perfection, pure unity.
Spur unity.
And then everything else kind of like flows down from there, like a cascading waterfall.
I mean, I'm visualizing this waterfall.
Yeah.
Where does the soul fit into all of this?
So you've got the one at the top,
Mm-hmm.
then from that you get the intellect,
Ah.
which is this realm of pure thought and the forms.
Form.
You can think about the forms as like blueprints
Right.
of everything that exists. And then you have the soul, which is this kind of bridge between the perfect world of the intellect
Right.
and this messy material world that we experience.
So the soul's not just like a part of the body?
No, not at all. So this is something that Plotinus was really adamant about,
Okay.
that the soul is separate. It's immaterial.
Right.
It's more like a divine spark within us
Oh, wow.
that's using the body as a vehicle to experience this material world.
So like, if the soul is the driver, the body's the car.
Yeah, the very fancy, complicated car. But yeah, you got it.
Right.
And that separation of soul and body really raises some questions about how we perceive the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the soul is the real seer,
Mm-hmm.
then what role is the body actually playing?
That's so interesting because the sources you sent me talk about both the soul and body being involved in perception,
Right.
but in really different ways. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure. So think about it like this.
Yeah.
Your senses, they're constantly bombarding your soul
Right.
with information about the world, the sights, sounds, smells,
All that stuff.
all that stuff. But it's the soul that's actually doing all the heavy lifting
Oh.
of interpreting that sensory data. It's like the soul's the detective, right?
I like that.
Piecing together the clues
Yeah.
to figure out what's going on.
Okay, so the body's gathering the evidence.
Yeah.
All's making sense of it.
Exactly.
I like that a lot.
But there's another piece of the puzzle here.
Okay.
This whole concept of forms.
Right. Can you explain this to me like I'm 5 years old?
Okay, so imagine you're baking a cake. You need a recipe, right?
Yeah.
A blueprint that tells you the ingredients and how to put it all together. Forms, for Plotinus, are like recipes, but for everything in the universe.
Oh, wow.
They're the perfect eternal blueprints that exist in the intellect, that higher realm we talked about.
So there's a perfect form of cake out there.
Yeah, and a perfect form of everything else.
Oh my gosh, that's wild.
It gets even wilder, because Plotinus actually says there are two types of forms.
2 types of forms.
So you have the transcendent forms, which are those perfect blueprints in the intellect,
Right.
untouched by this messy material world.
Okay.
But then you have what are called immanent forms,
Imi-
which are kind of like copies of the transcendent forms,
Okay.
but they're present in the physical world.
So like the transcendent form of cake is like the ideal cake.
Right.
And the immanent form is the cake that I actually bake.
Yeah, with all the imperfections.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we perceive something,
Yeah.
Plotinus says we're actually connecting with the form of that object,
Okay.
at least in a limited way. So when you see a beautiful sunset, you're not just seeing colors and light. You're tapping into the form of beauty itself.
Whoa. Okay. So our senses are like giving us a glimpse into
Yeah.
this deeper level of reality, this world of perfect forms.
Exactly.
It's like perception isn't just about like passively receiving information.
Right.
It's about actively connecting with these like universal principles.
You got it. And Plotinus, he dives even deeper into how this works, especially with visual perception.
Okay, well, let's dive into that then.
Yeah.
I'm ready for more mind-blowing insights.
So we've got this idea that our souls are like using our bodies to kind of interact with the world.
Right.
And perception is about connecting with those perfect forms.
Right.
But even back in Plotinus's time, people were already trying to figure out how vision works, like mechanically.
Oh, yeah. I bet they had some interesting theories
Oh, yeah.
back then.
So like, were they dissecting eyeballs already? Or
Right. Were they like mapping out the optic nerve?
Well, not quite. But they were definitely thinking about things like light
Okay.
and how it travels.
Okay.
Some folks thought that vision worked kind of like throwing a spear.
A spear.
Yeah, where you send out rays from your eyes,
Okay.
they touch the object, and then bounce back to you.
Interesting.
Others imagine like a physical medium like the air, or
Right.
tiny little particles
Yeah.
that carry the visual information.
So they were already thinking about this connection between the physical world and how we perceive it.
Absolutely.
So what did Plotinus think about all these theories?
Well, Plotinus wasn't buying any of it.
Okay.
He thought these theories were way too simplistic,
Okay.
too focused on the material mechanics.
Right.
He was much more interested in the role of the soul
Right.
and those forms that we talked about.
Yeah. So if it wasn't through physical means, how did he explain vision?
So remember that idea of sympathy.
Yeah.
Plotinus said that vision works because of a kind of resonance
Okay.
or harmony between the eye and the object. It's like they're vibrating
Yeah.
at the same frequency,
Interesting.
allowing the eye to directly grasp the object's form and color.
Hold on. So you're telling me my eyes are tuning into objects I see like a radio receiver?
Yeah, kind of. It's like the eye is reaching out
Okay.
and making contact
Oh.
with the essence of the object.
Okay.
And remember, for Plotinus, it's not the eye itself that's perceiving, right?
Right.
It's the soul using the eye as an instrument.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this immaterial soul vibrating in harmony with the material world, and that allows us to see.
Yeah, pretty much. Plotinus was a pretty bold thinker.
That's pretty wild.
And he actually drew on some of Plato's ideas
Oh,
from the Timaeus,
okay.
where Plato talks about the eye containing this kind of inner fire.
Inner fire. Okay.
Yeah, and this inner fire interacts with the light of the day to allow us to see.
So is Plotinus taking this ancient idea of an inner fire and giving it like a Neoplatonic twist?
Exactly. Plotinus saw this inner light not just as like a physical thing, but as a really crucial element in how the soul,
Okay.
through the eye,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
able to directly apprehend the forms of objects.
I wonder what he would think about modern physics
Oh,
and how we understand light to have like a dual nature,
right.
both a wave and a particle.
Yeah, it's almost like he was intuiting something
Right.
about the deeper nature of light
Yeah.
way back then.
That's pretty amazing.
But Plotinus wasn't just focused on vision, right?
Okay.
He applied this concept of perception to the other senses as well.
Okay, give me an example.
So think about taste, for example.
Yeah, it is.
The qualities of sweetness or bitterness or
Yeah.
sourness,
Right, all those?
those aren't just inherent
Okay.
in the food itself, according to Plotinus.
So they only become real once we experience them?
Yeah, they only become real in our experience of tasting.
So you're saying that like the sweetness of honey only exists when I taste it?
Precisely.
There's no objective sweetness floating around out there.
Right, it's a kind of co-creation
Okay.
between the sense organs,
Right.
the object, and the perceiving soul.
Okay.
The sweetness arises in that interaction. It's like
Oh,
the soul is the artist,
I like that.
the tongue is the brush,
Okay.
and the world of flavors is the canvas.
Yeah, so the soul is using our senses to like paint this
Yeah.
experience of reality.
Exactly.
So we're not just passive observers of the world,
Right.
we're active participants in creating it.
And that creative process, that active engagement,
Yeah.
is what allows the soul to kind of move closer to that realm of forms,
Right.
that higher level of reality.
Wow, this has really changed how I think about how I experience the world. It's so easy to just take our senses for granted.
Right.
But Plotinus makes me appreciate this really intricate dance
Yeah.
between our souls and our bodies in this amazing world of forms.
Exactly. And speaking of intricate dances, what about memory?
Oh, yeah, good point.
If we're actively creating our experiences,
Right.
how do we hold on to those experiences? How do we access them later? How did Plotinus explain that?
Yeah, that's a good question. If the soul is immaterial and unchanging, where do all those memories go?
Plotinus was definitely aware of this challenge.
Okay.
And he didn't really like the idea of memories being like physically imprinted onto the soul,
Right.
because that would suggest that the soul's being changed.
Yeah, which contradicts his whole idea of the soul being perfect and eternal. So
Yeah.
how did he get around that?
He suggested that memories don't literally reside
Okay.
within the soul itself,
Okay.
but in a kind of intermediate realm.
An intermediate realm.
Yeah, a realm connected to both the soul and the body,
Okay.
but not fully part of either.
So like a cosmic cloud storage?
Kind of. He wasn't super clear on the mechanics of it all,
Okay.
but it seems like he was hinting at a kind of spiritual dimension
Okay.
where memories can exist without directly affecting the soul's essence.
Okay. But if the soul is immaterial, how does it physically interact with this memory realm?
Well, again, Plotinus was more of a philosopher
Right.
than a scientist in his approach.
Okay.
So he didn't really delve into the nuts and bolts of that interaction. But it seems like he was suggesting that the soul has a kind of like intuitive
Okay.
or non-physical way of accessing and retrieving these memories.
So the soul isn't limited by the physical constraints of the brain.
That's the idea.
It can tap into this other dimension of memory through like willpower or intention.
Yeah, good way to think about it.
Okay.
And it really reinforces his idea that the soul has access to realms of experience
Right.
that go beyond the material world.
Right.
It's not just bound by the limitations of the body.
Okay, so we've got this immaterial soul perceiving the world, storing memories in a spiritual dimension.
Right.
But what about our individuality?
Yeah.
If the soul is this eternal universal thing,
Yeah.
how do we end up as these unique individuals
That's a great question.
with all our own personalities and quirks? And
Yeah, it's like asking, how do we get so many different flavors of ice cream
I like this.
if they all start with the same basic ingredients?
Right, so our personalities are like different flavors of soul.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
Plotinus believed that our individual personalities emerge
Okay.
from the interaction between the soul
Right.
and the material world,
Okay.
particularly our bodies and our experiences
Right.
in this life.
Okay.
Think of it like this. The soul is like pure white light,
Okay, I like that.
okay? And when it enters the material world,
Mm-hmm.
it passes through a prism.
So the prism is our bodies and experiences,
Yeah.
and those color the light of the soul,
Right.
creating these unique hues of our personality.
Exactly. Our personalities are not like permanent fixtures of the soul.
Okay.
They're more like temporary expressions of the soul's journey through this life.
So even though we're all connected through this universal soul,
Yeah.
our individual experiences and choices give us our unique flavor.
That's a great way to put it. We're all expressions of the same divine essence,
Yeah.
but we each bring our own unique perspective and flavor to the mix.
This is also thought-provoking.
Yeah.
It's like a whole new framework for understanding ourselves and our place in the universe.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, if the soul is eternal and our personalities are just temporary expressions, what happens to our sense of self when we die? Does it just like vanish?
That's where things get really interesting, and that's where Plotinus's ideas about reincarnation come into play.
Oh,
But I think we need to take a deep breath and dive into that in the next part.
okay.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Right.
And I want to give you and our listeners time to digest all of this before we move on to the soul's ultimate destination.
All right, so we're back and ready to talk about this big question. What happens to the soul after death?
Yeah, the big one.
You mentioned reincarnation.
Yeah,
Does Plotinus actually believe that we come back for like round 2?
he does.
Round 3?
Yes. Plotinus was a big believer in reincarnation.
Yeah. Okay.
But his take on it is pretty unique.
Okay.
It's not just about souls being randomly reborn into new bodies.
Right.
It's all part of this grand journey of the soul returning to its origin,
Okay.
to the one,
To the one.
to that pure state of unity and perfection we talked about.
Okay, so reincarnation's not just about like second chances or karmic payback.
Yeah.
It's like a cosmic elevator, slowly lifting our souls back to the top floor.
That's a great way to think about it.
Okay.
Each lifetime is like a step on that staircase.
Right.
And each step offers the soul opportunities to learn, grow, and purify itself.
But if the soul is already perfect,
Right.
why does it need to be purified? Like, what's the point of all this learning and growing?
That's a good question. It's a little paradoxical.
It is.
If the soul is already perfect, why all the fuss about reincarnation
Right.
and returning to the one? Plotinus actually addresses that.
Okay.
He says it's not that the soul itself is imperfect.
Okay.
It's more about the soul's journey
Okay.
to the material world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Each lifetime kind of leaves a residue,
A residue.
a bit of dust,
Duh.
that clings to the soul from its interactions with the physical world.
So the soul is this like pristine diamond,
Yeah.
but every time it goes out for a spin in the material world,
Right.
it picks up a little dirt and grime.
Exactly. And reincarnation is about polishing that diamond,
I see.
removing those impurities.
Right.
So the soul can shine in its full brilliance.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But if our personalities are just temporary expressions, like a product of the soul's interaction with the material world,
Right.
what happens to our sense of self when we die?
That's a good question.
Does it just dissolve along with the body?
Well, Plotinus suggests that when we die,
Okay.
the soul undergoes a process of purification,
Okay.
shedding the attachments and memories of that particular life.
So it's not like we're going to be hanging out in the afterlife with all of our past selves,
But not exactly.
like rehashing old arguments and all that.
Not according to Plotinus.
Okay.
He believed that the soul retains a kind of core essence,
Oh.
a seed of its past experiences
Okay, see.
that it carries with it into future lives.
Interesting. Okay.
It's not a complete erasure
Oh,
of who
yeah.
we are.
Yeah.
It's more like a refinement, a distillation of the soul's essence.
So like past lives are chapters in a book.
That's a great analogy.
Each chapter tells a different story.
Right.
But it's all part of this overarching narrative.
Exactly. And those past experiences, those seeds of our former personalities, can actually influence our choices
Right.
and inclinations in future lives.
Well, like we're constantly evolving.
Yeah, it's like our souls are constantly evolving and growing,
Right.
carrying the wisdom and lessons of our past lives with us.
Okay, so what about that final reunion with the One?
Right.
If reincarnation is like climbing a cosmic staircase,
Yeah.
what happens when we reach the top?
Right. What does that ultimate union look like?
Yeah.
Well, that's the ultimate mystery.
Okay.
The peak experience
Yeah.
that Plotinus tried to describe.
Okay.
But even he admitted that it's something that words can't really capture.
Right.
He used metaphors like ecstasy and bliss to try and convey the sense of unity,
Yeah.
wholeness,
Yeah.
and pure being
Right.
that the soul experiences when it merges with the One.
So is it like falling in love but on a cosmic scale?
It's something like that.
That sense of complete
Yes.
dissolution of boundaries.
But even those analogies kind of fall short.
Right.
Plotinus believed that this state of union is beyond our current comprehension.
Okay.
It's something we can only really experience,
Right.
not fully grasp intellectually.
So it's like the ultimate destination, the payoff for all those lifetimes
Right.
of striving and purification.
Exactly.
But it's shrouded in mystery.
Yeah,
Is there anything we can do in this life to like prepare for that ultimate union?
absolutely. And this is where Plotinus's philosophy gets really practical.
Okay.
He's not just painting this abstract picture
Right.
of the soul's journey.
Yeah.
He's giving us concrete advice on how to live our lives.
So it's not just reading philosophy and
Right.
pondering the mysteries of the universe.
It's about putting those ideas into action,
Right.
making them a part of our everyday lives.
Okay. So how do we do that?
Well, remember that hierarchy we talked about?
Yeah. With the One and
The One, the intellect, the soul,
the soul.
and then the material world.
Right.
Plotinus says that we can use our minds,
Okay.
our capacity for reason
Reason.
and contemplation
Right.
to align ourselves with those higher levels of reality,
Okay.
even while we're still down here in the material world.
So by focusing on truth, beauty, and goodness,
Yeah.
we're kind of tuning our souls to the frequency of the One.
That's a great way to put it. It's like we're training our souls to
Right.
recognize their true home,
Right.
to remember where they came from
Right.
and where they're ultimately going.
And that doesn't just happen through intellectual pursuits.
Right. It's about living a virtuous life as well,
Okay.
cultivating qualities like compassion, kindness, integrity.
Right. So it's all connected.
Plotinus believed that virtuous actions actually purify the soul, helping to shed those impurities we talked about.
Right.
It's like we're cleaning our spiritual house,
I like that.
making it a more fitting dwelling for the divine.
This is all starting to feel very relevant to
Yeah,
our lives right now.
it is, isn't it?
Even though he was writing this like almost 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's like he's giving us a roadmap.
Yeah, a roadmap for navigating the complexities of modern life.
Yeah, to find meaning and purpose
Exactly.
in a world that often feels very chaotic and overwhelming.
Yeah, and that's why Plotinus is still so relevant today.
Yeah.
He's offering us this timeless wisdom,
Right.
a way of seeing ourselves and the world
Yeah.
that transcends cultural boundaries
Right.
and speaks to like the deepest longings of the human heart.
It's like he's reminding us that even though we're caught up in all this daily hustle and bustle,
Yeah.
there's this deeper dimension to our existence.
Exactly.
We're not just physical beings going about our business.
Right.
We're souls on a journey.
Yeah.
And that journey has a destination.
And a purpose.
This has been an incredibly enriching deep dive.
It has.
I feel like I have a whole new perspective on perception and the soul,
Yeah,
but even on the meaning of life itself.
absolutely.
What a journey.
And it's a journey that doesn't end here.
Right.
Plotinus invites us to continue exploring these ideas,
Yeah.
to test them out in our own lives.
Yeah.
See how they resonate with our own experiences.
It's a great point.
Who knows, maybe you'll have some aha moments of your own
I'm sure I will.
as you delve deeper into these mysteries.
Yeah, this is definitely something I'm going to be pondering for a long time to come.
I know I will too.
It's amazing how these ancient philosophical ideas can still feel so fresh
Yeah,
and relevant today.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this fascinating landscape of Plotinus's thought.
It's been my pleasure.
It really has. And to all of our listeners out there, may your own journey of self-discovery be filled with wonder, insight, and a growing sense of connection to that divine spark within you. Until next time, happy exploring!